My name is Evan, and I have panic disorder. It all started 3 years ago, when I was moving back from a research internship in Ottawa. My roommate brewed me a parting gift, a half mug of strong espresso. Half an hour later, I started to feel weird, really weird. I was lightheaded, my palms were clammy, my breathing started getting erratic, my chest tightened, my limbs seized up, and started to go numb. I thought, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. Pulled over, called 911. The paramedics arrived and said, okay, calm down, slow your breathing, breathe deeply, slowly, just try to regain control. And I'm thinking, I'm having a heart attack here, I'm gonna die, what are you talking about? I wasn't having a heart attack, I was having a severe caffeine-induced panic attack. This traumatic experience created a connection between driving, caffeine, and panic that I would live with for 2 years before reaching the breaking point. By late 2011, I was getting several of these a week. I'd get them on the bus to work. I'd get them after drinking even decaf coffee. I'd get them when I'm hiking out in the middle of nowhere, far from medical aid. I lived in constant fear of the next attack. So I said, that's it. I went to see a psychologist and said, I don't want to take any medication, what can you recommend? She recommended this book. I read it cover to cover in a week and designed my own recovery plan. This recovery plan was based around 3 pen and paper logs: a food log, an exercise log, and a panic log. You're thinking, pen and paper, why pen and paper? Well, I'm a tech geek, and to tech geeks, pen and paper is unusual, exciting, meaningful. For the food log, I had simple goals: maximum 4 drinks a day, 14 per week. 1 sweet thing per day, no caffeine. Well, I saw I was drinking way more than I expected, and that I hadn't cut out caffeine. On to exercise. Simple goal again, 30 minutes per day. If I didn't meet that goal, I put an entry in the right column: busy at work when I was on call. Bleak mind fog when rejection from grad school took a week-sized chunk out of my plans. Panic attacks went in the panic log. Have panic attack, I record it there. I saw that driving and coffee were clear triggers for this, and even decaf coffee, and that coffee was the stronger trigger. This insight pushed me to eliminate coffee altogether from my diet. 6 weeks into this, I felt great. My attacks were down in frequency and severity. I felt less stressed out, more energetic. I was cured.
You looked a lot younger.
Amazing, yeah. An amazing feeling to have after 3 years. But it was premature. I wasn't cured, not yet. Instead, I'd reached the gray zone. What is the gray zone? The gray zone is that space between relapse and recovery. It's that space where you think you've recovered, but you haven't. Those recovery habits, the ones that got you this far, start to lapse. And that lapse in habit leads quickly to relapse. For me, that meant I stopped writing in my log. I stopped paying attention to diet and exercise, and consequently started having panic attacks again. However, since I'd reached the gray zone, I said to myself, well, this is okay, I can fix this. All I need to do is start writing in my log again, and then I'll bring myself back into the gray zone. So it's one of those pernicious things where you become trapped in this area that you can't escape from. And I oscillated on that border, never fully recovering, stuck instead in this purgatory between relapse and rebound, relapse and rebound, relapse and rebound. A familiar situation for a lot of people struggling with drastic lifestyle change. So this brings me to my central question. How do we design through the gray zone? What keeps us in the gray zone? I'm going to share a few insights from my experience here. The first of which has to do with novelty. New creates an itch. Starting towards recovery created enough excitement to push me through those first few weeks. But by the 6th week, when I thought myself cured, that excitement was starting to wane, and there was no sustained commitment to replace it. I needed that commitment. I needed an understanding that without permanent change, those changes would not be useful. The second thing has to do with support. When I started on this, I told everyone I knew, friends and family, hey, I'm doing this. And I built up this cloud of low engagement support around me. Well-wishers, the sort of people that like your activity on Facebook. When I reached the gray zone, though, I needed higher engagement support. I needed a recovery partner, because a recovery partner is worth more than 100 well-wishers. The well-wishers have a bystander effect. Your problem is not their problem. The final thing is complacency. By reaching the gray zone, I had changed the way I thought about panic and recovery. Relapse was no longer as threatening because I had a tool to bring me back into the gray zone. All I had to do was start writing in the log again, and I'd feel cured again. Well, I did this 3 times. Same effect. I'd start writing in the log, feel cured, stop writing in the log, relapse, repeat. These 3 things, the exhaustion of novelty, the lack of deep support, and complacency, conspired to keep me in the gray zone. So what am I doing to push beyond it? I built something called counters, which is a way to reduce friction in the recording process. The idea is that if the less effort it takes to record something, the easier it will be to do that. In counters, you pick the 5 things you want to measure now, and then recording is a one-tap process. Have a drink at the bar, tap alcohol. Go on a run, tap to start, tap to stop. Simple. To combat the lack of deep support, I need a recovery partner. And so I'm making an open appeal. Any of you out there who are struggling with drastic lifestyle change, join me, and let's build things to help push us through this gray zone. And finally, complacency is a sign, this feeling that I've reached the gray zone, that I've cured myself, is a sign that I need a better problem. In late August, I'm doing a 4-day vision quest in the High Sierras, for which I will need to truly master my fear of isolation related to this panic. After that, who knows? I'll need bigger and better gray zones to tackle. So, in the last 7 minutes, I've covered my history of panic, my initial approach to recovery, this idea of the gray zone, and some of my next steps. So I'll leave off by saying that building sustained motivation is a difficult problem. It's a problem of human psychology, not engineering. But if we're going to build things to make ourselves better, not just now, but for the rest of our lives, we need to think about it. We need to design through the gray zone. Thank you.
Alex?
That was a great talk. I have kind of to myself sometimes. How will you know when you have recovered?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I would say for me, recovery would mean I never have one of these again. And that's arguably a really difficult goal to reach. But that sort of falls into the idea of bigger and better gray zones. The idea being to, instead of struggling with the fact that you can't fix this problem you're in now, look down the line and say, okay, well now I'm having a panic attack once a week. I want to have one once a month, or I want to be able to drive out in the middle of nowhere without feeling afraid of that. And then you just sort of set your sights on that and pull yourself forward. So in short, I don't know what full recovery looks like. I just have a sense that trying to progressively reach higher goals is a good way of going about it.
You mentioned psychology. Have you looked into the psychology of this? I remember a talk by Kelly McGonigal at a habit design meetup where basically she said you can't gamify, you just can't gamify things that are this hard to change. And you have to look at other ways of doing that the psychologists know. They've written books about it.
So I haven't read that particular thing. I have started to look into things like The Power of Habit by I think it's Charles Duhigg or something. But gamification in my mind has a bit of a bad association because it suggests this rat wheel point gathering system that is very good at tackling this pre-gray zone sort of thing. Because in my mind, that activity of gathering points has sort of a depreciating effect. You gather the points and then eventually you realize, hey wait, these aren't worth anything. They don't actually improve me. So I think, I haven't read much into it, but I'm definitely curious to read more about it, the psychology of habit. and the psychology of how we make that behavioral accounting in our minds that decides for us.
I think the point I want to make is there's two types of behavioral change, easy and hard. And you're talking about hard.
Yes.
And gamification doesn't work for hard. And there's literature.
Cool. Well, if you can recommend anything, I'm like more than glad to read it.
So, you didn't say whether you had ever had a panic attack before this event that you mentioned to us. If that is true, what is the story that you tell yourself about why you're having them and why it began?
So, my belief is that day I had an especially high dose of caffeine. My father has said that he's also sensitive to caffeine at various points. Heard this is a genetically determined thing, but haven't done the whole 23andMe spit test. My guess is that the traumatic nature of that experience was enough that it triggered this association between the caffeine and the driving and this panic response. So I hadn't really experienced anything like that before.
So that would suggest that this is something that's in your head rather than in your body?
Well, it's a tenuous distinction to make.
Sean, you had a question?
So
Sure.
would you suggest that you need to be logging for the rest of your life?
It might help. I guess part of what I'm suggesting is that the manner in which I log is probably going to evolve. And understanding that it will evolve and that I have to evolve that process as I move myself further along that spectrum is part of it.
Would you consider if your logging decreases in frequency that you're moving towards the gray zone?
I think what I felt was that once I reached the gray zone is that point just before you stop logging. Once you're there, you think you're cured, and then you say, okay, that's it, I'm done, I don't need to do anything more. So that's roughly where I felt that was.
Do you feel like there's a drop off between logging, the tactile logging, and the tap? Is it the same process?
It's not quite the same feeling. Like I said, I've only been doing the tap logging on mobile for a couple of weeks now. So I think to get a really good read on that, I'll have to do it for a few more and see if it still has the same powerful motivation behind it. If I find that it doesn't, I'll sort of bounce those off each other and see, okay, does the paper logging make me more likely to do it? Does the tactile logging make me more likely to do it? Are there other factors that I control to sort of hack my motivation in this?
Do you know if the logging might either consciously or subconsciously affect your behavior, such as caffeine intake, exercise, diet, and sleep?
Oh, it definitely does. That's the excitement effect. Being excited, logging, changing the behavior is part of the excitement. And the excitement is what drives you to say, okay, I'm not going to drink any caffeine today. I'm going to run for 3 hours. I'm going to do all this stuff for the next couple of weeks until I forget about it.
So really you need an alternate means to shift behavior. Logging happens to be one.
Yeah, I more see it, again, that comes back to the evolving process. If you find a way to evolve the process frequently enough and meaningfully enough that you are still excited about it as you go on, then I think that's really powerful.
You talked a little bit about the deep community and potentially that being a way for you to permanently change and disease states where I've seen where people have to make severe lifestyle changes forever. To me, that's been, I observe, a really effective way, and I was just wondering if you had any comments about going back to that or combining that or alternating that with logging?
Like I said, I made the open appeal primarily because it's something I haven't really tackled yet. And I think to get a better read on that, I'll have to try getting more people deeply engaged with my recovery and vice versa.
So take one last question.
Sure.
So I'm not sure what your experience with this is, but a lot of what you're saying sounds very 12-steppy. And and that component that you're asking for is the fellowship component. But also, you've only been doing this for 2 years, and you keep relapsing. And I think, like, in a period of time, so they in 12-step programs, you know, you're new for 1 year, you're brand new, and not a lot of what you say carries a lot of weight because you're new. And so you're someone who's currently continuing to experience panic attacks with this one method that you've been able to control it. But this gray zone that you keep going back into seems to be I guess I'm just encouraging you to just keep doing it and to give yourself a broader horizon and not so like focused on just one part of it. I just want to encourage you.
Well, thank you very much for the encouragement. That really means a lot to me. Just to set the chronology a bit clearer there, the 2 years was the part that I did nothing whatsoever about this. And that space between then and now is when I've really started to tackle it. So the time that I've actually been dealing with it in a constructive manner is about 6 months.
Oh.
So I'm still in that, that Newberry of time. Definitely looking for ways to get out of it.
So let's give a round of applause.